Welcome, everyone, to this August 22nd edition of The Truth. Where has the summer gone? I'm telling you, time is moving at warp speed. And today, we've got a lot to talk about. James O'Keefe, who we had featured on the show last week, voting and demonstrating outright election fraud in Minnesota, took his cameras to Alaska. We'll have a clip of James O'Keefe voting and exposing Alaskan voter fraud. Nick Shirley is still trying to stop fraud, and there are a lot of people who are trying to stop Nick Shirley. Go figure. We're going to talk about the scandalous Mar-a-Lago raid that President Trump will never forget, and I don't think he's ever going to let it go until the people that did it are held accountable. And then Dan Bongino goes off on Joe Kent. We'll get into all that and a lot more. Guy Morris, author and a tech pioneer, is here to talk to us about his new book, The AI Tsunami. Dr. Brad Thayer, also an author, has a new book out, America's 100 Years War, How to Win the War Against Communism. And then Scott Wheeler, an investigative journalist and author, did the FBI knowingly miss Antifa firebomb suspects. So we've got a lot to talk about. I think we've got a great show for you today. And today's show is brought to you by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy and Bogey's Beef. Now, James O'Keefe, who originally had the Project Veritas show that went undercover and exposed people who were basically lying and doing bad things, got kicked out of his own company that he founded. And it seemed to, at that time and still, to be more about having stolen James O'Keefe's company than exposing improprieties by James O'Keefe, which I actually never heard or read any of, but that was sort of the narrative that surrounded it. And now he started the O'Keefe Media Group, and he's still doing what made him famous to begin with. And he went to Alaska, as we said, and exposed outright voter fraud. Let's take a look at what he's done this week.
And Brian Murkowski?
If you want, we can look you up first. Or...
Yeah, I just want to see this right.
No, I left the ID at home.
So, okay.
Can I give you a name?
Yeah, we'll trade.
Okay, sorry about that. The last name is Murkowski.
And what is your first name?
The name is Brian.
Do you know how to spell Brian?
Brian. Is the name on the list?
You are.
Okay, perfect. So this is the right place.
Yes. State ID.
Oh, okay.
Military ID.
I think I left that at home.
Oh.
Maybe
I should be like TSA. A real ID, please.
Would it be possible to vote without it today?
Absolutely possible.
Oh, good.
You have a mugshot.
Oh, I think I left that at home. Blood?
DNA.
I got blood. Yeah.
You got blood. You want to leave your blood?
Can you check to see if I'm in the right place?
I can do that for you.
Oh, hello.
But you don't have any IDs?
I think I left it at home. Would it still be possible to vote today?
Yeah. Yes. You can vote if you'd like to. Do you want to do a question ballot?
I mean, all I got to do is do the question ballot, then I can vote.
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's so convenient. It's shocking that the people inside this polling location here in Alaska did not question me at all, considering the last name Murkowski is very, very unusual last name, and that's their current senator. But I went in there and kept saying I didn't have my ID. The woman said, you can vote today. All you got to do is fill this document out. So we just fill out the question ballot, and then Brian Murkowski can vote today.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
There you have it. Voter fraud, the story that keeps on gifting. James O'Keefe is an amazing guy. He dresses up, changes his appearance, and then goes and exposes people. In this case, Alaska, which has a voter ID requirement, but you can see it doesn't really make a difference. He was allowed to vote in spite of the fact that he did not have his ID. And again, we find this to be occurring in predominantly blue states. Now, they do have a token Republican U.S. Senator there, but she is a classic rhino because in order to get reelected, she has to walk a very tight rope, and a lot of the times will vote with Democrats. So I think you got to conclude that Alaska is purple at best, but probably more blue. And that's where we're seeing the Democrats just flicking everybody off, thumbing their nose at us and saying, we're going to cheat, and that there's very little you can do about it. So we'll keep returning to this common theme that we see repeated time and again all across America in these Democratic leftist states. Well, Nick Shirley has done great work at exposing fraud. He visited first Minnesota, where I believe they tabulated to begin with $30 billion in fraud, which actually grew to $120 billion. And then Nick went to California, where he exposed fraud. So what did they do? They passed a Stop Nick Shirley Act. Don't they want to stop fraud? Let's roll tape.
California right now is voting on AB 2624, aka the Stop Nick Shirley Act. This is the bill that was created after I exposed widespread fraud inside of immigrant communities here inside the United States. They created this bill that specifically protects immigration support service providers. That includes, but is not limited to, any place that receives money from the government that gives legal services to illegal migrants or provides health care to illegal migrants. Anything that has to do with immigrants or illegal immigrants that your tax dollars go to, they are trying to shield and actually penalize somebody for going out and exposing potential fraud that's taking place. If I were to go outside the Quality Learning Center and say, hey, there's no kids inside this daycare and they received $1.9 million, they give me a piece of paper saying, hey, you cannot publish this video, therefore I cannot publish the video online. That's according to this bill that's being brought about right now. They're voting on it. And if I were to publish that video, they'd give me a $4,000 fine. And not only would I have to pay for my own legal fees, I'd have to pay for the legal fees of the person who's suing me. And also, this bill was created by Mia Bonta. Her husband is the Attorney General of California, Rob Bonta. So the Attorney General is supposed to prosecute and go after fraudsters. Meanwhile, his wife is creating a bill, and it's here on the Senate floor right now to get passed, to protect fraudsters from being exposed. Now they're going to go ahead and vote, and there are 30 Democrats and 10 Republicans here inside the California Senate, and there needs to be 21 votes to get this bill passed. Let's see what happens. We got 4 ayes and 1 no so far. Uh-oh, not looking good. We got 7 yeses, 1 no. All right, we got 1 more no. Oh no. We got 30 yes votes and 10 no votes. AB 2624, aka the Stop Nick Shirley Act, has passed here inside the California Senate. They want to make it harder for those to expose fraud to be able to go out and expose fraud. They're actually going to penalize you if you go out and do it. They're going to protect immigration support service providers over legal taxpayers here inside the United States. That's how twisted this bill is right now. And the wife of the Attorney General is the one who created this bill. We are officially in the Califradia Republic.
Here's a guy, he's 23 years old. He's gone to California, he's exposed fraud. And so to stop him, they're making what he is doing a violation of the law. Well, I think that this will ultimately end up in the U.S. Supreme Court, if I had to bet. First of all, I hope that the legislature is not successful in passing it. That's the first line of defense. But if it does get adopted into law, I think it will end up in court, and I think it will probably go to the U.S. Supreme Court before it's all over on the grounds that it is suppressing Nick Shirley's First Amendment rights. So we'll keep following this, but I think the shocking part of this to me is that we're even having this conversation to begin with. And really, when you boil it all down, is this any different than the Democrats saying that we're going to cheat and we're going to steal and we're going to protect ourselves by the color of state law to enable us to continue to do what we're doing? It seems like absolute fraud on its face on many levels to me. Well, you'll remember that under Merrick Garland, the FBI went into Mar-a-Lago during the Biden administration. They ransacked Mar-a-Lago, rummaged through the First Lady's closet and drawers containing her underwear and lingerie. They went through Barron's room, and it was such an invasion of their privacy, who no one is alleged have done anything wrong. They were looking for classified documents while the then illegitimate president of the United States had possession of classified documents in his own garage in the state of Delaware. So the hypocrisy and just the sheer demonic behavior of sending the FBI into a former president of the United States house and raiding it to find classified documents which President Trump had the power to declassify. And my argument would be that by taking them, he de facto declassified the documents, which he had the power to do. So now the chickens are coming home to roost. Merrick Garland said that he did this on his own volition, and we've got evidence that the directive came straight from the Biden White House. Roll tape 3.
These emails obtained by Fox News paint a different picture of the relationship between the Biden White House and the Biden Justice Department. These two offices made it clear at the time, at least publicly, they were not connected and stayed away from any political interference. However, new emails obtained by Fox News from May 2022, 3 months before Mar-a-Lago was raided by the FBI, illustrates coordination between the White House counsel's office and the DOJ regarding an interview of Walt Nauta. Now, remember, Walt Nauta is a current White House aide to President Trump, who was then former President Trump's aide in Florida. Nauta was later charged alongside Trump by special counsel Jack Smith. The May 10th, 2022 email reads in part, coordination with DOJ and White House counsel are in work to start the process to confirm and interview current administration employee Walt Nauta. This event is dependent upon the timeline of President Biden's brief decision and coordination between White House counsel and DOJ, and in turn, Evan Corcoran's position on the override of privilege assertion and whether or not he seeks an injunction to prevent access. That was written by an FBI agent, and Evan Corcoran, of course, one of Trump's lawyers at the time. This coming August, Brett, will mark 4 years since FBI agents raided Mar-a-Lago. A few days after that, then Attorney General Merrick Garland said this.
I personally approved the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter. Second, the department does not take such a decision lightly.
And we're getting new reaction to these emails. Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan in the House says in part, it's always worse than we thought. These newly released documents confirm that the Biden DOJ's raid on Mar-a-Lago was politically motivated.
So this really is nothing new, other than I think we knew all along that all of this lawfare emanated from the Biden White House. And why? Because he knew that Trump was on his case, that Trump was going to expose him. That's what they were fearful of. I have always suspected that they believed that Trump was in possession of something very damaging towards Biden, that he might be holding in Mar-a-Lago, that he could use against Biden or one of his cronies, or maybe Democrats in general. I don't know. I always thought that it was politically motivated, and I thought it was a fishing expedition. Maybe we'll someday soon learn the truth. But there's one thing that really bothers me about the way that Trump's detractors are explaining this as going after Trump's political enemies. So Trump's political enemies broke the law and went after him. But now, because they are his political enemies, Trump is not, and his administration is not supposed to go after them for having broken the law? Riddle me how that makes any sense at all. I mean, let's just say Merrick Garland committed murder. Could the Trump administration not go after Merrick Garland because he was Trump's political enemy? You see what I'm saying? It follows no logic. It is intellectually dishonest to say that Trump and his administration cannot go after people that tried to undo Trump when he was a private citizen because they feared him politically. That is, in a nutshell, exactly what they did and what they're saying now in order to try and absolve themselves of accountability. I hope the American people aren't stupid enough to fall for it. These people are truly evil, and I don't make that statement lightly, and it's not a bias. It is just a fact that the lengths that they have gone to or went to get power and to hold power are disgraceful. It was a disservice to our country, and I think it will go down in history as some of the worst 4 years in American history. It is starting to be exposed now and confirmed for the American people what we've been talking about on this show for the last 4 years. And I just can't wait. I so badly want us to return this country to the way that it had been for almost 250 years until this Democratic Party just went completely off the rails under the leadership of Biden, Obama. Let's don't trivialize or minimize this at all. You know, every former president has left Washington and gone back to their home state in most cases and lived pretty anonymous lives and returned to some sense of normalcy. Not Obama. He stayed in Washington, and I don't think it was the Biden administration. I think it was Obama 3.0. I think the more information that is released and that we're allowed to see, the clearer that picture will become. And you know that Biden didn't have the mental ability to make a lot of these decisions. So who was orchestrating this? I think in time we will learn that all roads lead straight back to Barack Hussein Obama. Well, I've never said so publicly before, but I'm going to say so today, and I think I brought the receipts with me. I've never been a huge Dan Bongino fan. I have been envious of his large podcast. I wish we could say that we were even remotely as well watched and evidently liked as Bongino's show. We're getting there slowly but surely. You can help, by the way, if you'll go to YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X, Rumble or Getter, all or some, and just subscribe to our show. Like us if you do, and share it with your friends. You could do a tremendous amount of good to help us continue to get great guests like we have later on in today's show. So it doesn't cost anything. It'll only take you much less time than it's taken me to explain it. So consider subscribing if you would. It would do us a great deal of help, be a great service to us. All right, so Bongino, you know, he just rants and raves, and I don't know how to portray him, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I gave him the benefit of the doubt because he has so many followers and so many people who swear by him, and people on the national stage show him all sorts of deference and respect. But I think that he's showing his true colors now. The way that he handled the Epstein files was an embarrassment. I mean, don't portray myself as being someone who is schooled in reading people's body English, but that famous interview with him and Kash Patel where Bongino said, yeah, I've looked at the file. He killed himself. He just looked uncomfortable saying it. It didn't feel like he was being genuine with us when he said it. And then if you accompany that with the surrounding circumstances, and, you know, YouTube videos have been put up that show an orange jumpsuit ascending the stairs to Epstein's cell late in the evening that he allegedly killed himself. It doesn't make me convinced that Epstein killed himself at all. But the way that Patel and Bongino, who promised that they were going to go to Washington and give us transparency, really just it continued the business as usual SOPs from the FBI. And I don't know how they were coerced. I don't know how they were brought over to that way of the usual bureaucratic speak and avoiding transparency. But Joe Kent, on the other hand, he was Tulsi Gabbard's top guy, and he was in charge of international intelligence. And his job was to guard our gates, to guard our borders and make sure that the enemy did not operate within the U.S. And he was doing that. Principally, he and a lot of people really wanted to get to the bottom of Butler. And so he went on Jimmy Dore's show, Jimmy Dore, who I actually really like. Jimmy Dore is a comedian with a podcast and a huge audience similar to Bongino in size. And they really went for Bongino, not viciously or maliciously, but just truthfully. And I would encourage you, if you want to see the interview, just search for Jimmy Dore on YouTube and watch the interview with Joe Kent. We're trying to get Joe Kent on our show, and hopefully we will be able to. We've reached out to him, and we have a mutual friend that's trying to get him for us as well. But here's Bongino's reaction to the interview that he had with Jimmy Dore. And I don't know, what do you think?
Joe keeps insisting that he was somehow, despite no investigative authority whatsoever, blocked from the Charlie Kirk investigation, although he was not an investigator and had no authority to investigate the Charlie Kirk investigation. So he responded to yesterday saying, well, I'm just going to play a little bit of it, and I want to explain how he actually outs himself here yet again, and yet people still believe, oh, I trusted. Okay, great. Play this. Can you stop when I tell you to stop? Because I don't want to go through the whole thing. All right, check it out.
I'm going to briefly describe the role of the National Counterterrorism Center in the investigation of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So NCTC analysts are a part of every joint terrorism task force throughout the entire country. The JTTFs are typically led by the FBI. NCTC's role within the JTTF is to determine if there is any foreign nexus. So that would be a foreign country, a foreign government, a foreign individual, a foreign company. If there's any foreign connection or nexus to an act of domestic terrorism, like the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So that's what NCTC analysts were doing as part of the JTTF to assist the investigation of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So NCTC analysts were operating at the request of the FBI to determine if there was any kind of foreign connection or foreign nexus to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So NCTC is a unique organization within the intelligence community. It's part of the intelligence community. It can see all the operational traffic, all the raw reporting coming from the forward-facing intelligence community, the CIA, the DIA, the NSA, etc. But it can also see the raw operational reporting coming from the FBI and other federal law enforcement agencies.
Stop. I'm just going to leave this here. I'm really sorry Joe Kent, when he decided to swear in for NCTC director, had no idea what his job was. Notice how he outs himself here. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to help Joe and you, okay? The thumbnail is devastating. We didn't do it on purpose. I don't want to be accused of like the thumbnails. Everybody's got a bad thumbnail out there. Ladies and gentlemen in the chat who've been members of the USIC or a JTTF, do you know what raw intelligence is? Raw intelligence is exactly as it sounds. If you're out there on X or Snapchat and someone posts a video saying that space aliens killed Joey Bag of Donuts in Georgia in a terror attack, that's what's considered raw intelligence. I don't know if Joe knows this or not. What would happen is an analyst who's not an investigator would get that and give it to who? An investigator, i.e. not Joe. I've already told you they have no investigative authority at all. Someone should just ask him that question. I don't know why he keeps saying this. They would give it to an analyst. The investigative work is done by investigators who have power to investigate, subpoena powers, arrest power. Is any of this hard? The investigators determine if raw intelligence is then actionable intelligence. Joe has nothing to do with that, nor does his shop. When they don't determine it's actionable intelligence, that raw intelligence is not thrown out, but we've investigated it. There's no lead there. He keeps insisting he somehow had that bridge role, turning raw intelligence into actionable intelligence because they were investigated. That is not their job. They have no power to do it. Okay, done. I'm not doing this anymore. I can't. This guy, he can comment all he wants. I really feel bad for this guy. And if you're falling for this op, just know you're being played for a fool. Why he's trying to insert himself into a very serious criminal trial going on right now by constantly commenting as a guy who was trusted with the public trust is just disgraceful at this point.
Well, I think what is disgraceful is that Dan Bongino was truly in charge of the investigation. I've studied it. I've looked at it. I've read about it. We've talked about it here. I think Candace Owens, while I think Candace, frankly, is hard to watch, and she grates on my nerves because she says in an hour what she could say in about 5 minutes. And I think that is for money and for clicks. Okay, who cares? The fact of the matter is, I think she's exposing real truth in this, along with people like Dr. Murkowski, who's conducted ballistic tests, and a number of other YouTubers that are legitimate journalists that have looked at Charlie Kirk's death. If you believe the story that the FBI has put out on Charlie Kirk's death, and that Tyler Robinson shot him with a .30-06, that the bullet lodged in Charlie's neck and had no exit wound and did no head trauma, you just must be delusional or in denial. There's no way that story holds up or makes any sense whatsoever. And so to the point for me is, if the FBI isn't going to investigate the death, and if they're going to push this false narrative on the American people, which sounds like Tyler Robinson is Lee Harvey Oswald 2.0, he's clearly a patsy in my view, then let Joe Kent, who was then the director of the DNI, investigate. He clearly has the responsibility to look into foreign interference inside this country, and especially if it transcends into a murder. But we'll just have to let it sit there. Me think he doth protest too much. Bongino, I'm talking about, and I'm sure he would like all of us just to go away. We have no standing, no ability to form an opinion or to propose alternative theories on what happened to Charlie. And I don't know. I truly don't know. I went on a radio show and was asked, who are my suspects? I said my suspects were members of the United States intel organizations, i.e. the FBI, the CIA. My suspects included members of Turning Point USA, where Charlie was investigating financial improprieties and had ordered a Doge-style audit 8 days before his murder. He also appointed a new COO, a chief operating officer, in Turning Point. There's a lot to be looked at there. And then I also said that I didn't think that you could discount or refuse to consider Israel as a possible suspect. Charlie had I'm not going to say he had turned away from Israel. I think that's been represented. I think Charlie started questioning Israel's influence in this country and the amount of influence that they have, and their Netanyahu's frequent visits to the White House, and what many people feel like is an overabundance of influence inside our country and inside our country's policies. And I was interested in the fact that Netanyahu, in the moments after Charlie died, said Israel had nothing to do with it. Well, I hadn't heard anybody suggest that Israel had anything to do with it. It would be like the Prime Minister of the UK saying we had nothing to do with it, or Vladimir Putin saying we had nothing to do with it. Well, none of them have said we had nothing to do with it because no one has alleged that they had anything to do with it. And I didn't think about Israel having anything to do with Charlie's death until Netanyahu immediately said we didn't do it. Kind of makes you scratch your head, doesn't it? So, from my standpoint, I have no agenda. Absolutely zero. I'm not interested in tearing down Dan Bongino, the FBI, the CIA, Israel, or anybody inside of Turning Point USA. My agenda, pure and simple, is the American people. Charlie Kirk was an American treasure. He's the smartest person I've ever had the pleasure of meeting and knowing. And he was a patriot. And I do believe fervently that he was a disciple of Jesus and believed in God and the scripture. He could quote the Bible better than any preacher I've ever known. And somebody ripped him away from us savagely, publicly, disgracefully. The American people at least deserve to know, and his children and his parents, his family and his wife, I think, deserve to know who killed Charlie Kirk. That's all we are asking and, in fact, demanding. Well, that's the monologue for today. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being with us. We're going to run a couple of commercials here real quick so we can pay some bills. And then we're going to get right to the show and 3 great interviews, Guy Morris, Dr. Brad Thayer, and Scott Wheeler, coming up next on The Truth. Thank you for joining us. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Today's broadcast is brought to you in part by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. They're a restaurant services company in North Georgia. They will sanitize the front of the house, the back of the house, remove your waste vegetable oil, clean your grease trap, and your vent hoods. If you're tired of slow, inconsistent, unreliable, and dirty service from your provider, check out PCRenergy.com. They're in Atlanta, no automated attendance, and they'll give you a quick response. PCRenergy.com, where you get to speak to a live person, no automated attendance, and they give clean, good, reliable service, locally owned and operated in Atlanta. It's www.pcrenergy.com. It's delicious, it's nutritious, and best of all, no dishes. We're talking about Bogey's Beef Jerky, of course. Premium craft beef jerky that's taken off at the most prominent golf courses and resorts across America. Made for the turn, the road, or whenever you need a bold, protein-packed snack, Bogey's delivers the rich flavor and that premium chew every time. From smoky heat to Pineapple Express, try some Bogey's beef. They've got a flavor for every player. Bogey's Beef Jerky, tee it up, tear it up, and enjoy.